2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Come and take a seat. We are about to start. There are people sat at home waiting for us to get going, and they might not have a drink in their hand, so.
I give you all I have, but you always want more. I give it freely to you, but you always want more. I give you all I have, but you always want more. I give it freely to you. Enough is enough, but it's never enough. Enough is enough, it's all that you need. Enough is enough, but it's never enough. Enough is enough, it's all that you need. Didn't I give you everything? Didn't I give you everything? Didn't I give you everything you need? Didn't I give you everything? Didn't I give you everything? Didn't I give you everything you need? Didn't I give you everything? Didn't I give you everything? Didn't I give you everything you need? The tree and the bird and the fish and the bears. The tree and the bird and the fish and the bears. The tree and the bird and the fish and the bears. The tree and the bird and the fish and the bears. The tree and the bird and the fish and the bears. The tree and the bird and the fish and the bears. Wherever there's a tree that never grew. Wherever there's a bird that never flew. Wherever there's a fish that never swam. Wherever there's a bell that never rang. Wherever there's a tree that never grew. Wherever there's a bird that never flew. Wherever there's a fish that never swam. Wherever there's a bell that never rang.
Welcome, welcome. There we go. I'm shorter than they thought. Um, so welcome to those of you that are in the room, and welcome to those who are watching from home via the live stream this evening. Welcome. I'm Alison, and I moved back from Australia just in June and landed my first gig with a small organisation called Oi Musica, who, although small, have a big heart and an even bigger vision. And so I felt quite lucky. In my interview for the job, I said that this project is the perfect alchemy of all the things I love. The earth, music, activism and community. I mean, what an amazing job to land. So Let It Grow, for those of you in the room who don't know, and those watching at home, it was a seed of an idea amongst Scottish artists during lockdown last year that they could create a protest song about climate change that could be sung on the streets of Glasgow during COP in November 2020. And we all know what happened there. So instead, they made a music video, of which many of you in the room were in. And that's no mean feat during a lockdown, coordinating artists including Oi Musica, Karine Polwart, Heather Macleod, the Soundhouse Choir, Brass Eye, a group of drummers. The list goes on. And they all had to learn and film their parts, all separately, and getting people to sing in time, in key, from their living rooms is no mean feat. So wow, what a song of epic proportions. I cried the first time I watched the video. I don't know about you, but I cried. And that was before I was even given the job, so you know, it's pretty good. So Enough Was Enough quickly went viral, and from this little seed in lockdown, the project, Let It Grow, began. The idea was that people across the world would record their own version of the song or create new work inspired by the song to create an online tidal wave of music during COP. And people did. We have seen contributions flood in from across the world, from the UK, South America, Australia, Europe, and even Leeds City Council singing in chambers. Tonight on this panel, we have representation from some of the commissions that form part of the project, and we'll be watching some of their videos and hearing more from them about why they got involved. So we'll welcome questions from the audience towards the end, both people in the room and at home on the live stream. So if you're watching from home, you can just put things in on the comments, and we'll try and feed some of those into the conversation. And if you're tweeting, we'd love you to use the hashtag #MusicForCOP26 and tag at @letitgrow_music so that we know what you want to say. So I'll introduce the panel now. So Becky Wallace, Glasgow local, singer-songwriter and producer, and is firmly placed at the heart of Scotland's songwriting community. Becky's an activist for women in the music industry, and her recent release outlines the struggles both personally and as part of the wider industry in Scotland for parents trying to remain relevant. And we need to talk about that later. Becky was part of the collective with local Glasgow rapper Johnny Cypher, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, and they created an amazing response to Enough Is Enough, which we'll hear later. Ollie Furness, co-director at Oi Musica. Ollie is a multi-instrumentalist, has toured internationally with band Orchestra del Sol, which she co-founded with Marcus Britton and other artists. She's a community music practitioner and has helped set up street bands in numerous communities across Scotland, and is co-founder and co-director of Scotland's first dedicated street band festival, the Encontro Street Band Festival. And of course, founding Oi Musica with Marcus, who's right at the back there, and acting as project manager on this mammoth project, Let It Grow. Dr. Gamali Kodzo-Todro, have I said that right? I forgot to check how I pronounced your name. Founder of the Har Orchestra, Gamali is artist in residence and research associate for the School of Education at Glasgow University. And his research explores creative arts and translating cultures, language, and education with a focus on African diaspora music, video film production, story, and storytelling. He worked with the Ghana Police Band to create his commission of Enough Is Enough. Jen O'Brien, co-founder of Music Broth, musician and former climate change project manager. Jen abandoned her corporate life to let her Irish roots run wild in the third sector, and we're very, very pleased about that. Thanks for joining us. So that's the panel. You'll hear from them in a little while. We also have, oh no, she couldn't make it. I was just going through my script, and we did have Soundhouse Choir director Heather Macleod here, but she had to leave last minute. So why are we here tonight? Firstly, we're here to bear witness to and celebrate. She just walked back in the room. I might grab her later. We're here to witness and celebrate some of the incredible, diverse and powerful works that have come out of this project. This is the first time many of us have been in a room together, so there is a lot to celebrate tonight. And then we will use these videos to prompt conversations around how music can create social and political change. Can music do this? Can we utilise song to lobby governments, to change behaviours and to make the world a better place? Let's find out. So, we're going to start by watching one of the films that has been created. This is a multicultural reworking of Enough is Enough from saxophonist and composer Luc Michal, working with musicians from Metex, a production house for urban music in Brussels, featuring a range of percussionists and brass musicians. Let's watch.
You needed water, I gave you the sea. You needed shelter, I gave you the tree. You needed fire, I showed you the sun. You needed air to breathe, to breathe.
Je te donne tout ce que j'aime et tu veux toujours plus. Je te lave de bon temps mais tu veux toujours plus. Je te donne tout ce que j'aime et tu veux toujours plus. Je le donne volontiers pour toi. Enough is enough.
But it's never enough.
Enough is enough.
It's all that you need.
Enough is enough.
But it's never enough.
Enough is enough.
It's all that you need. Didn't I give you everything?
We will give you everything.
Didn't I give you everything?
We will give you everything.
Didn't I give you everything you need?
Give you all you need.
Didn't I give you everything?
We will give you everything.
Didn't I give you everything?
We will give you everything.
Didn't I give you everything you need?
Give you all you need.
Wherever there's a tree that never grew.
We will make it grow.
Wherever there's a
I love the energy in that film, and if you want to watch the whole of it, then you can go onto the Let It Grow website, letitgrow.scot, and check it out there, along with all of the other contributions that keep coming in. I'm going to hand over to the panel now, and Ollie, I'll start with you, because it would be really good to hear from you about where the idea for the project came and your ambition for it, and then maybe talk a little bit about the Metex video and how they got involved.
Sure. Yeah, the idea really came about thinking about the work that Oi Musica does with street bands and about bringing music to free and public places and involving communities as much as possible, and discovering that COP26 was coming to Scotland and thinking, right, surely there's a role here. If ever there was a role for street band music, it is that situation, and starting to try and project ahead a little bit and wonder what kinds of things might be happening on the streets during COP26. I think it was pretty much 2 years ago that I found out that the summit was coming here, and we were still quite high off the back of running the Encontro Street Band Festival just a few weeks earlier. So it was really, I think, without having had that experience of bringing joyous, free music experience to the streets, I may not have almost had the ambition, if you know what I mean, but it was hot off the back of running a festival of that nature. And then as a musician, it was starting to think, well, how on earth do you bring in a message around climate change, and not just about the climate and the earth and the trouble that the world is in, but also about the things that are driving that, and the economic systems fundamentally that sit behind that. This relentless, private profit-driven economic system that we have that's all about eternal growth. So it was like thinking about all these different things, and how on earth would you make a musical response to that? Particularly a big question for Oi Musica, because we work with instrumental music rather than working with lyrics. So it was like, all these ideas kicking around. And an early series of discussions with Lisa Hoff-Stewart, who's here in the audience. She works with the fantastic Wellbeing Economy Alliance, whose work is all around shifting the focus of our economies from constant growth and constant profit-driven world to thinking more about collective well-being for all of us. So we had some synchronous thoughts when we found out that COP26 was coming, and we had a series of discussions. And it was looking like one particular thing, and then the pandemic happened, so things had to shift. And during that space, I had begun discussions with Heather Macleod of the Soundhouse Choir, and they had sprung to mind because we're thinking, well, if you're going to combine the music of street bands, which are very loud, if you're going to work with lyrics, and if you're going to be working acoustically, you're going to have to work with a lot of voices. So straight away it was like, Heather Macleod, we've worked together before, her choir has 100 people. Let's start those discussions. So as a musician, it was some questions around that, and trying to find a team of people that we could have a creative space where we could explore the music making side of things. But as my work as a community music practitioner, it was also thinking about how would other people respond. So it wasn't just about what we would do and sort of centering our piece of music, but also thinking about what that means for other, particularly grassroots music makers, and thinking about our sort of network of street bands, but also being aware that there's an incredible network of community choirs in the UK. So these were some of the thoughts that were going around our head. And jumping forward to after making the initial music video, we had a lot of discussions about how we would help that to fly out to other groups. And at one point I was thinking, well, if we don't sow some specific seeds, then it might just be that 50 different choirs pick it up and record a version and sing it, and that'd be lovely, but it wouldn't be a particularly interesting art project. It would be lots of repetition. So our connection with MetX and Luc Michel, who you've just seen there, immediately groups are springing to mind who are composers and who have a lot of creative drive in their work, and they sprang to mind because they are in a bilingual or a trilingual country in Belgium. So we also wanted to respond as artists in Scotland, but to really think about the fact that obviously climate change is a global issue, and there are other communities that are feeling the effects of this more. So we wanted to work in some different languages and be more inclusive. And yeah, absolutely delighted with the version that they made. And we didn't actually have the subtitles at the beginning. If you watch it on YouTube, you can put the closed captions on, but it's exactly the same lyrics as Karine's opening lines in the original song, but sung in a kind of free style in Fawn and in Arabic. Fawn is maybe a language that you're familiar with, Gamily, yeah. So, have I spoken for too long?
So So what we'll do now is we'll go to the next film, which brings us closer to home. And it was filmed right here in Glasgow with a collective of artists led by Johnny Sofa, featuring Becky Wallace, amongst other artists. This is it.
This is it, there's a moment as the knife edge breaks the skin. The waters will get in, you will be taken in your backup plan. Won't keep you safe and will it matter then? We're all together in this.
Alright, you're probably wondering why I called this meeting. With the poets, with the people that give this kind of confidence meaning. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, I'm sure they're all trying the hardest. Just while they chat about managing targets, I thought I'd gather the artists, cause we all got a stake in this. MCs are no scared of taking risks, of saying how they really feel. So I'm wondering what we say to this. I think Scotland's green movement needs to consider who it involves. Any environmental movement without the working class is no movement at all. Social ecology, I honestly think that we're missing the trick by thinking the climate's a hobby for middle class hipsters and miserable gits. The same thing causing the inequality, discrimination and stress. It's the same blind hungry machine digging us ever deeper into this mess. And I see no need to resort to the recent IPCC report to get these people on board. Do we need to explore the depressing statistics? These reports so keen to be told that the talks just run too deep and a cause for a peaceful approach. And I feel that we've seen this before, so enough is enough. It's all
We gave you quarter, you hacked the forest with poison, bred life for slaughter. We lined your pockets, human fodder. As the borders crack, the earth expands and contracts, and in the midst of that the hierarchy blame the impoverished. I wasn't taught to be thoughtful, advertising for profit. I acquired an awful lot of pointless objects, as we all did, a philosophic subordinate of the global order. I come to the table with a lot to learn but more to offer, so here's a cautionary story of how not to die. Surround yourself with your possessions as the stars collide. The richest purchase weapons for the inevitable reckoning when the western population realise that they're next in the firing line. No community left amidst the panic. I predict that this is a moment where we suddenly accept it's happening, holding on to the agonal gas of society, anarchic agony, starving in the violence of the irony. This is it, there's the moment as the knife edge breaks the skin. The waters will get in, you will be taken in your backup plan. Won't keep you safe and will it matter then? We're all together in this.
Wish someone had told us, we wish that we had known. Sister Earth could not afford us, so the system took what's owed. The man should have been that I found that it is his alone. But they pick out the sick of the victims while the richest live in domes. So we're far from ready, man, for the Armageddon slam. Yeah, there's hardly any plan, that's why billions gonna die. And we'll all carry the can to pour the ordinary gang caught short, unfortunately damn Joe. So billions gotta try to get up, stand up, put your hand up, be counted out. You bet I'm fed up getting hit up at the insurmountable fact that the boss's class is like the masses, weak so we can wipe their asses, seeking equal rights. Strike a last to fight the so people side the planet, resist this climate damage. It seems some dismiss the kind of savage signs of ravage. Retreating ice caps happening, see the seas are rising rapidly. Beast disease and blight it, baffling past our time we try to battle it.
Hold it'll come, if the climate will change. Feel the heat for the sun, standing under the rain. More ups and pain, clear the air in my name. Cause since I was a win, I've watched the climate change. Made a new mucker, McD's walker. Wait, you sitting in the heat and a huffer. Try to suffer for a vegan burger. Eh, where I need another reason to wonder. Where am I in a slog full of wonder? I dropped 100 volts, a lightning bolts and a ball of thunder. Wet, put your eyes in your pockets if your mouth look it. Wet, plan doesn't work cause we broke it. You don't know what you love till it's gone, and we don't know what we hate till we've got it. And I guess they guess that we're not putting in effort when we're all just trying to lick a necess in the desert. But it's not to ignore, we've been here before, could show you the door. Lies, no look to the sky, they're asking us why. We all deny science. There's plastic cups, plastic case, plastic bags, plastic waste, plastic fans, plastic noise, your plastic cared about your plastic face. The world's a better place cause ours. But wait a minute, time will show you how good it could be if we weren't the in it.
It's been so long since your first breath. I'm airing through and I'm keeping it real. I write these bars down to express the way that I feel. In this day and age, we always try to conceal, but I'm not making it up. up. You see, this life's so surreal, it's hard to deal with how fast the surf is moving. But we haven't done it by looking after or improving, taking things for granted. If you can't see, we're losing. You need to wake up from your blinded confusion. I don't find it amusing. What the are you doing? You need to refrain from using the words that you're using. We need to stop abusing this planet that was blooming. Stop producing the poison and pollution. We should stand up, we need to find a solution. Need to start with straight talking and no dilution. Begin a revolution to start redistributing the wealth. We need a contribution, we need your help.
This is it, there's a moment as the knife edge breaks the skin. The waters will get in, you will be taken in your backup plan. We'll keep you safe and will it matter then? We're all together in this.
The climate's changing, planet rearranging. Where's our haven? Where's our heaven? Been fighting demons since age of 7. Better watch for serpents up in the places we're lurking. The earth is giving us birth and we're only giving a burden. Take me back to Pangea, back to the future. My two-seater with 2 and 2 leaders. I could've swore that they knew Peter. Dear Mother Nature, I'm so sorry for my part. Noise pollution, light pollution, trying to shine up in the dark. Fire in the park, rainforest going up in sparks. Now I gotta swim the flood, they're already building ours. So the pandemic just seemed like a slight message. Messing with the Messiah and the maker just might end it. Politicians, yeah, I call their bluff. Yeah, they think they're tough, making up the rules for us, but they don't know when times get tough. Times get rougher in the dirt, we find the diamonds in the world of anti-climate. We just got to rise and climb it.
The combination of the poetry and the imagery in that video blew me away when I first saw it. And there was one line that in particular that stood out for me, which Johnny says, which is, an environmental movement without the working class is no movement at all. And so I'd be really interested, Becky, to hear from you about your drive for making this particular work, but also about how, and Jen, you might want to come in on this as well, about what the feeling is here in Glasgow around COP and how music has influenced that.
Cool, okay. I think just before I do that, I would like to mention the person that filmed that video is sitting there, Ian Hendel. He did a really, really good job. So thanks, man, for doing that, because I think you brought a lot to the narrative just with your visual choices, which was great. Yeah, that line really struck me too. And Johnny Cypher, who has been a climate activist for a long time, has actually been at the core of my understanding of this issue. And over time, I think a lot of us have listened to him within the hip-hop scene, within the underground music scene, and that's been his message for many years. And in a lot of ways, a lot of us were took longer to jump on board with that. And certainly from my own perspective, like, my work is all around using songwriting to build emotional literacy and give people a voice. And a lot of the time I think that the clues in the words, the working class, like, people need to be able to understand the problem viscerally, and sometimes the language that we use and the way we speak about it ostracises people from the conversation. And I think that's a place where something like hip-hop can spread a positive message, but also by commissioning certain people to work on certain songs, like, for instance, Jamie, who's from Govan, who did the vegan burger part of it and all that, which is so cool. What you're doing then when you ask someone to take part in a creative project like that is you're getting them to go and do research about that and understand it more. And so in creating the art, we understand the problem more. And that's certainly something I've found across all my practice with the students we work with just our group of musicians that are around us. Certainly within the city, the conversation's happening, but bringing a relatability to it and also helping people understand how it's affecting their families and their homes and what they can do. And also kind of disillusioning them to the fact that, you know, they're not to blame for it, because I think there is certainly a culture of blame on not just the working classes, but all of us, people who are trying to do a little bit. So as you can hear from the song, like, I think everyone came to it from a different angle as well. Certainly myself and Tickle, who's not here this evening, both more from that class analysis, but everybody in the song has something to say about it, and they're coming from their own personal experience, and I think that's what makes it so relatable, you know. And I really think that's all we can do, have the conversations and have them where they need to be had, and allow people to understand it in their own way too, and do what they can in their communities. But certainly the power of art in general to pass any message on has never been, I've never felt the ground so fertile in the city as it is now, not just for COP26 but for lots of reasons, and certainly with the right people on board to make things happen, like you guys and you and others. It is, so yeah, it's been great.
I would say that working with Johnny as well, he was one of the first people when I was starting Music Broth that got involved in what we were doing, because he really got the connection to the environmental aspect of what we do. So we're a musical instrument library, so we take in instruments and restore and repair them and get them out into the community for people to have. So Johnny was one of the first people at our events who came up to me and started talking to me about climate change and how the impact of that and what we were doing. And it was like the grassroots movement, I think, in Glasgow is really, really strong. There's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of people who are willing to just get involved and get on with it and do the things that need doing. I had a friend yesterday over in Ireland talking about there's not much happening at COP26. The politicians are not doing much. What's happening? And I was just like, well, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're on the ground. We're actually doing the doing, you know. They can take their time and make their decisions, and if they're not going to make the decisions, we're just going to get stuff going and do it ourselves anyway. So I think that's part of like the community here, and the music community is really welcoming, really open, and I think it's a really good, like Becky said, fertile ground for people to have interesting conversations about what's happening in their lives. We've very much encourage people to take an instrument, even if they've never played before, to express themselves whatever way they want to do. Tell your own story. We're not about teaching scales, and we're not about, you know, progression into grades and stuff like that. We're like, tell your story, do your thing, be it beatboxing, be it rapping, be it take the theremin out, take a violin, bring it back, take a saxophone out. We don't really care. Like we're not our whole thing is about making instruments accessible to people and to have no hierarchy or no sort of, if you're from here you can have a double bass, or other ways you can't. So I think that whole kind of the way of talking about what's accessible to people, what people can have hold of, and also even for us taking in instruments from people, it's kind of like a redistribution. It's like folk have these things sitting in their loft and stuff, so we're like, don't hold on to stuff, give it to us. We'll give it out there to other people. You know, you can come back and take it back out of the library if you want it. You know, if you turn around in 10 years' time and you decide you really do want to play the oboe, you know, come back. So yeah, so we do that as well. So we're kind of like trying to do it from lots of different angles. And we've been involved from the very start. Becky's been one of our #1 supporters as well. So the community here is just so strong and massive. And I would just say, like, the working together thing is really important, and getting people to speak, and, you know, us being here, and thank you for having us, to speak and being able to share our journeys and our voices as well is really important.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next film now, which takes us back overseas to Brazil. And we're going to meet Coral Guarani, who are a choir from the indigenous Guarani community, and hear their song Terra Nossa, which means our world. This is just a short extract from a film that's 8 minutes long, and we really, really recommend you go and watch the whole thing, because it includes interviews with the music makers as well.
Hoje o Guarani ela precisa de terra. Antigamente não, a terra para nós era nossa, né? Então hoje mudou tudo. Hoje você tem que ter uma terra para você sobreviver.
So land rights are a particular big concern for the Guarani people right now, and so this song has a lot, holds a lot of power and meaning for those people. And Ollie, I just wanted to hand over to you at this point to talk a little bit more about that. And also Guarani, it might be interesting, I think what the Guarani people do beautifully is storytelling through their song, and that's a big part of your practice too, so it'd be good to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, this connection to this indigenous community came through Manuela Benini, who's the dancer in the red dress in the original video. She was due to be here tonight, and COVID contact tracing has put the nail in the coffin for that. She's fine, but she can't be here. I think what really struck me about that piece of work is it's easy to be in a position of relative comfort here in a developed country and to sort of do this is our song about climate change, you know, but to then see this piece with those words from people who are facing eviction from the lands that belong to them, and constant threats from, I mean, the political situation in Brazil at the moment is absolutely shocking. And I think it's difficult for people over here really to comprehend that. So that connection from Manuela was just brilliant, that we could reach out to people right on the front line of the issues that we're talking about and that should be being discussed here in the Blue Zone at COP26. And I think there's a lot of disappointment about how those voices are not cutting through there. But talking about how music can connect people, the fact that our project could then instigate this connection, and that's a new piece of music which is a response to the original piece. Manuela translated the lyrics of Enough is Enough, and then this was a response, and we discussed whether it was appropriate to invite them to respond to that song when they have an entire culture that is built on singing about the earth and the land that they live off, so much more than we do. And I don't actually, it's the film that I know the least about because there's a language barrier, so that kind of international working is quite new to us, and Manuela was very much the translator and the connection there, so it's a shame that she's not here to speak about it. But for me, as somebody who was trying to tie together this idea of expressions and responses, musical responses to the climate crisis, to have that within these commissioned videos just feels that it absolutely should be front and centre. The piece actually isn't on YouTube, and it's interesting just thinking about like the background production working of the project, and like, oh yeah, you know, you just make a film and you bring up your editor and you do this and you do that. But the issues that community is facing are, they cover everything to do with internet connection and things happening in their community that they have to go off and deal with. You know, they're not able to work to the same timescales as us. So I think as artists as well, we can feel like, oh, you know, it's really difficult in the arts at the moment in the UK, you know, it's really underfunded. Well, try doing that in such a marginalised community. It's like a reality check, I think, for us as well. But the whole film is beautiful. It's not on YouTube yet, but it is on their Facebook page, and it's also on Let It Grows. And once it's uploaded to YouTube, we'll feature it on our website. But I really encourage you to watch it because there's some interviews which give a little bit more context to the lyrics of the song.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I felt really touched just looking at the expressions on the faces of the musicians there. And you know, sometimes when we are lost for words, it's music that we resort to. And you don't need to understand the language to understand their feeling. It's all written on their faces, and that's what I felt coming from that. Yeah, but like you said, it's Ollie, it's so easy to be here in Glasgow and do what we do, say what we say, but it's so different when you're living in the context where, you know, the change that you're seeing in the climate is affecting you on a daily basis. But we'll come to that later when I start talking about my own project.
Well, that might be a really nice segue into the next film, Gamily, because it's yours. So Gamily is still in the editing suite with his film. So this is the first clip that has been seen by anyone, except me and a couple of other people. So we're just going to show you a really short clip of his, and you'll just have to watch this space for the rest of it. Gamily told Ollie that he'd always wanted to work with the Ghana Police Brass Band, and so that's what he did. Although we've saved that bit, so you don't actually get to see them right now. We'll just show you a little bit right now. This is the right film, but I jumped ahead. So this is actually Music Broth's film. We'll start again. Sorry about that. I was getting overexcited by the police band. We're actually going to show the next video is called Enough, and it's back in Glasgow with Music Broth's volunteers, and it's their response to Enough is Enough.
Consider the waterfall, an eye tree of your heart.
Underneath your skin and bones, the heart of the earth.
Conjoined we reap, we sow.
You know, in peril our mother's wounds we can't ignore.
Consider the youngest born, may live without clean air.
Rising tides and droughts and storms, consuming them with fear. You have the power to change the course. Can you take a child's gaze and say you did enough? We all need hope. We're bleeding to death. Where are the leaders who will stand and protect?
I would like to see a fairer world where we are no longer destroying the futures of young people.
We have the technological solutions. We need the political will to make them succeed.
Flowers for the bees.
We all have a part to play.
Use more eco-friendly power. Listen to the children.
Capitalism is over. We need to prioritise the well-being of people and planet.
Pay attention to the warnings.
Recycle more.
Rewilding. We know what needs to be done. Why aren't we doing it?
A return to nature.
stand and protect.
Jen, it would be really, really great to hear what inspired your volunteers to take this up, and because they weren't one of the commissions, this was something they just did off their own back. So it's really interesting to hear about that. And I know you've already touched on it, but also to hear a little bit about how you're seeing on the ground music making real change.
I thought you were going to ask me how the hell did you get that from your tune, but so I had the absolute privilege of working with one of our volunteers, JP, on this, and JP heard the Oi Musica tune and was like, I think there's something about 2 minutes into that I could play with, and came back with that fantastic electronic banging track that we worked together then to put the lyrics together, and we shouted out for all our volunteers who wants to be on it, and we had people on the track from 3 years old to 50 years old. People wanted to do a bit in the instrumental bit in the middle to convey their thoughts about climate change and how it's affecting them and what they think people should do. So we took those snippets from people sending us WhatsApp messages, or we phone recordings, and we put all those together. And the lovely James that works with me did all the video editing, and the pieces that you see in there are images from the work that we do. And so there's some stuff we do a lot of work with refugee and asylum community in Scotland, and you can see us jamming with some folks in there. You can see us in the rain holding our event during a massive thunderstorm, as we do. So we put that in for symbolising that kind of future where we will have more storms. Some of us will be underwater. We're pretty well placed to cope with that in Glasgow, I think, but not in other parts of the world. So we wanted to make that connection as well. So that's how it came about. It sounds a little different from the original, but the kind of heart is still there. We talked about the heart of the earth being under your skin and so on. So we wanted to convey that we're all part of the problem and we're all part of the solution. And we wanted to, the call and response bit is, where are the leaders? So where are the leaders? So who's going to stand up and who's going to be counted? And it was a shout out to the people at COP26. Are you going to stand up? Are you going to look your children in the eye and say, you did nothing, you came and talked and you did nothing? And it's also to all of us, we're all culpable in the situation we're in, and what are we going to do? Which are the leaders here who's going to stand up and be counted? So that's kind of the bit of the song. And what we do, like I talked about in Music Rough, and we like people to express themselves and be part of what we do. We have a wonderful community of volunteers. So you're all welcome to join us, anyone here who would like to. We do everything volunteering wise. People can come in and just fix guitars for an hour. People can come to an event with us. People can come and jam with us and make music. We did a lot of online stuff during lockdown. We delivered over 300 instruments across the country, mostly Glasgow, but as far north as Aberdeen, as far south as Stranraer. So we're always looking for people to help us out with whatever we're doing. So all welcome. Yeah, cheers. Just to pick up on a couple of things that you said, it's been brilliant. There has been a really broad, in terms of musical styles, a really broad response to this, because I think in order to involve everybody and to get everybody feeling like it's an issue that really does affect us, people have to feel represented. So I think maybe in people's minds this idea of singing about climate change, I don't know, in my mind it was like maybe that's something that folk music does, and it's just brilliant to have hoped that lots of different styles and genres and different music makers would take it up and really bring in that representation, like, oh, okay, there's something more kind of poppy, and that's more where my music taste is, and I feel like this can talk to me in a way that another style might not. So that it's just great that you guys took that up, and I love the production on that track. And the other thing that I'm thinking about when you're talking about access to music instruments is like, I think we all need to start to feel a bit more about the sense of possibility, because I think
all of us can feel really jaded or really hopeless or like it's inevitable and we're not going to be able to do anything or make any change. And there's definitely an analogy between going, oh no, I'm not musical, you know, I don't play an instrument, no, that's okay, that's not for me. But if people have the opportunities to try and pick something up and have a go, you have that sense of possibility. And I think that can then translate more into your outlook. So anybody who's encouraging people to make music or get involved in the arts or express yourself, that has so many other repercussions and waves that can send out into society and into how we live. So for me, access to the arts is a really important part of changing our mindset, I guess, or opening up to possibilities, basically. So yeah, I think the work that you guys are doing is great.
So now we will watch an extract from Gamalee's video. So, Gamalee, you just said that you were going to talk about how we're seeing on the ground in countries other than the UK how people are being affected in real time by climate change, and I'd love to hear from you about that. And also, was that a baobab tree that you were filming under? Was that?
No, that was mahogany.
It looks like a beautiful tree, and there's something about the imagery of the tree in the song, but also in where people gather under the tree to make decisions, tell stories. And so I just thought that was a really powerful image in your film, and it would be really great to hear a little bit about the power of gathering people to make decisions collectively.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Oli, for inviting me to do this. And thank you all for getting involved in it, either as musicians or just being here today. And for everybody who is online, getting involved. This is a gathering. And in gathering, we harness all our potentials. And I think it is the kind of gathering in music that this project is doing is going to provide the ripples that we need, to really, stamp this problem. As we are speaking right now, in my hometown, I come from the southeast of Ghana, and it's a strip of land between the largest lagoon and the Atlantic Ocean. And as we speak, tidal waves are washing through the town, almost trying to get to the lagoon. And if that happens, that's it for a lot of people. Climate change is real for some people, and it's happening and affecting their lives on a moment-by-moment basis. And so it means that if we're going to make a change, it has to be now. It's not 20 years or 40 years or 30 years as the politicians are setting themselves, the kind of goals we're hearing people set themselves in Glasgow. If we go back to the idea of gathering, what I think is that the earth is intelligent. We consider ourselves as intelligent beings, but everything we are is from this earth. So where is the intelligence from if the earth is not intelligent? So we need to reconnect to the earth. We need to recalibrate our understanding. And that recalibration can happen really fast through music. Because at our core is music. If you look at it scientifically, everything is vibration. Everything is based on vibration. So we are musical beings. And so the earth is a musical entity. And for me, coming from my traditions, which is very, very similar to what we saw from Brazil, the earth is so important. There's a proverb that says, Anigba majo floor. You cannot jump over the earth. And so it brings us back to basis. Since we can't jump over the earth, we need to protect it. Since we can't jump over the earth, we need to be in touch with it. But then the question is, how do we stay in touch with the earth? How do we understand what the earth is telling us? Because the earth is communicating with us constantly. Science has proven that trees communicate between themselves. But we are so stuck up in ourselves that we are so detached from everything else. And that is the problem. In gatherings, we can reconnect. You can imagine how we are connected here right now. Watching all the commissions, the music videos, and each time we are watching them, our hearts come together. We respond together. And so I think that what happened in Glasgow should have involved more music, at the core of it. But maybe, we can continue planting the seed, and let it grow. I really am very, very hopeful, and that word is very important, that we can make a change, we can let it grow. It's very easy to be totally, to give up. But then, if we give up, then that's it. Like one of the music videos said, that's it. We should not let the distraction go on. So.
I think it's so easy from our place of privilege to forget just how this isn't an issue happening right now, and it's not something, as you say, that the politicians are talking about a 30-year plan, which is important, but what about today? So yeah, that was powerful words, and thank you so much for sharing about what's happening in your hometown. That's really, really difficult and sad. So let's move on to this next film. Comes from Havana, which is Glasgow's twinned UNESCO City of Music. And it's a Cuban rumba with violin and Spanish lyrics inspired by the Glasgow coat of arms.
Políticos, llora la naturaleza, llora la naturaleza. Ustedes no la escuchan porque no les interesa. Ustedes no la escuchan porque no les interesa. Políticos. Políticos, conciencia climática. Políticos, conciencia medioambiental. Oye el llanto de natura, nuestra madre noble y pura, que no para de llorar.
Deja el pájaro volar, al árbol déjalo crecer, el pez déjalo nadar y la campana como quiera sonar.
Tenemos que parar su llanto, también cerrar las heridas de la capa de ozono que aumenta cada día.
Ahí se derrite el glaciar, se desbordan mares y ríos, aumenta el calor, el frío, las tormentas, los tornados, los incendios, bosques han devastado de una manera brutal. Ay, natura está llorando, ella no puede aguantar. Ay, natura está llorando, mas ya no puede aguantar. Quieren volar, quieren crecer, quieren nadar, quieren sonar con ganas. El árbol, el pájaro, el pez y la campana. Político, tú estás en la cumbre y la natura con tu cuento no confunde, natura está llorar, ya no aguanta más.
Tomemos conciencia todos, no se nos puede olvidar. Conciencia climática, conciencia medioambiental.
Político, tú estás en la cumbre y la natura con tu cuento no confunde, natura está llorar, ya no aguanta más.
Cuidemos el medio ambiente con sentimiento profundo, deja que Glasgow florezca, así lo dice Samungo.
Político, tú estás en la cumbre y la natura con tu cuento no confunde, natura está llorar, ya no aguanta más. La madre discriminada, sin motivo ni razón, está provocando en el mundo gran desertificación. Político, tú estás en la cumbre y la natura con tu cuento no confunde, natura está llorar, ya no aguanta más. Miren que han pasado cumbre y no acaban de resolver, porque todo lo acordado se queda en el papel. Político, tú estás en la cumbre y la natura con tu cuento no confunde, natura está llorar, ya no aguanta más.
That gets right to the heart of the message, doesn't it? Politico, you are at the climate summit with your agenda, but don't forget the earth is crying. And we need them to hear that. We need the politicians to hear. And we're really pleased to say that the original video of Enough is Enough was screened in Scottish Parliament to our decision makers on Friday. We were pretty pleased with that one. And to delegates watching on the live stream internationally across the world. So it was really great that we got that in front of the people who are making these decisions. And one of the truly magical things about this project is that not only is it in the ears of our politicians, but finally, after 18 months, the song has landed exactly where it was meant to be, on the streets of Glasgow during COP. Woo! So on Friday evening, for the first time, all the amazing music makers from the video gathered in person for rehearsing this epic song. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to be able to see it, but they did also perform on Saturday in Edinburgh at Dynamic Earth. Never before has there been a build-up like this for one song. So they performed under the giant sculpture of Earth Gaia, and that was to the sound of grown men crying, to Ollie crying, and probably everyone else in the room crying. But that's how powerful music can be, right? It moves us. We feel it in our body. Then here on the streets this afternoon in Glasgow, we made noise of the most beautiful kind. And we have some footage of that performance now.
Most of us have come to Glasgow today from Edinburgh, from the Soundhouse Choir, and from Oi Musica. But we're joined today by the children of Govan here at the front. For the COP26 conference just across the river. And it's called Enough is Enough for two reasons. Enough is enough because it's time to sort this out. And enough is enough because we have to think collectively about what it means to have enough and to want more than you need. What is it that we need? You need air to breathe, to breathe, to breathe.
just need to take a minute to breathe that one in. Oh. Thank you so much to Heather Longwell, wherever she is in the room, who filmed that and edited it with a really tight deadline that I set her. It was beautiful, thank you. So for those of us that were there, it was amazing, wasn't it? It was just so fantastic. Just the energy in that square today was, I'm still shaking. This is the chance to open up to the audience and ask some questions. We've got a roving mic so you can be heard. But I'm just going to ask a question that's come in on the live stream before I do, which is, what are the biggest lessons learnt about cultural activism from this project? Who would like to take that?
That it's accessible, and that, for me, one of the biggest things I've learned is that I guess it's a cliche to say that there's a sense of a generational divide. Today, there was children in the street who had made their own placards and were well aware of the issue, understood it, and had their own voice, which was beautiful. Even within the work I do in the university, the students are so aware of this. They are already making art, they're already trying to find a way to be active. So for me, actually, this has been so enlightening because it showed me that there is a community of all generations within this city that are aware of this issue, and the coming together of those people is what is going to sustain the activism. So it's been amazing.
I would say that accessibility in music is a great way of accessing people and people accessing their feelings. I mean, you talked about it when you're in yourself and you're playing music, you're stopping worrying about what's going on in your life, your stresses and stuff like that. You have to be totally focused on what you're doing. You know, you need to remember the next word you're going to sing or the next chord you're going to play or whatever you're going to do. Or even if you're just jamming, you know, you're using your hands, you're using your body, you're grounded to the earth so much more. And I think for folk in different demographics across the country and across the city and across the world, there's so much to be stressed about in life just now. You know, there's climate change is massive. We've all gone through a massive pandemic. Some of us have lost jobs. Some of us have lost people in our lives. So, you know, everything's changed massively for a lot of people, and it can be very, very stressful. And music is one way that we can let go of that stress for a wee minute and just be ourselves and just be, you know, in our bodies. And it gives that pause for thought, I would say. And if you can lose yourself in a song for a minute and have that bit of space in your life, you get the next thought. Maybe you don't go straight back into that. You can have that wee pause and go, okay, I've listened to that. What am I doing next? You know, deep breath out, can take another breath in now and face what's coming next. So I think it gives us that wee pause, and I think that's applicable across life, no matter what age you are, no matter where you're from or what your worries are. If you can pause from your worries, we all need to do that. And I think that in language as well, we work with a lot of people who English is not their first language, and you know, you don't need to be able to speak the language to sing together. As we can see, we were all humming along with the Cuban music, you know. I didn't know what they were saying, but we were, you know, jamming along to it, you know. So I think that's important. We work with people who are non-verbal as well, so you know, people can sit and strum guitar or play, you know, xylophones or whatever they want to do. So I think we can communicate together. We can have a little pause and be a community and be a gathering without necessarily always having to be in our heads and use words all the time.
Yeah, I agree totally with you, particularly about the translatability of the activism, you know, and you know, the way music does that is that it translates to your heart directly. I think that, you know, particularly regarding my work in translating cultures, music plays such an important role in how it's, in a very short time, begins to make people feel family. I've, on countless occasions, I've brought musicians together, or just people who are not even musicians. And within a short time from playing music, the word family emerges, And so, for me, sometimes activism is combative, but music, softens the edge of that kind of, response to issues, and I think that is what makes the difference, because when you reach a person's heart, you've really made a very long stride in trying to solve a problem or getting an understanding happen. And I think one of the main issues for us today is the issue of understanding. Do we really understand the problem? And do we really understand what the solution can be? The pandemic gave us an opportunity to see things from a different lens. But, all of a sudden, we almost forgetting, But, there you go. So.
Yeah, definitely would want to pick up on that idea of something not being combative. Like, I think there's a really big difference between standing up and saying, we don't want this, we don't want that, or actually saying what we do want. Yeah. So the project definitely had to be about inviting people to get behind an idea rather than, fighting against something specific. That I think the combative attitude can take over if we're not careful. So getting positively behind something and saying that we're for something and start talking about ideas and possibilities and progress rather than what shouldn't be happening. That definitely chimes with some of the thinking. I've scribbled down so many notes when you guys are talking. It's like, yeah, I want to say that, I want to say that. Yeah, and I think one of the big lessons for me was just about the power of people getting behind an idea. So this has been a really great lesson in terms of getting behind this idea of a song and new songs that spin off from that. But if we all took away an inspiration about getting behind any idea, whether that's like setting up a community wind turbine in your local area or some sort of food collective or any kind of solution that is going to work for a local problem for you and your community, because the whole problem is so overwhelming and it's so all-encompassing, and it's to do with weather and it's to do with food systems and workers' rights and hours and transport and all of these things, and we can't possibly tackle all of them. But if there's something specific to your community or your area and somebody has an idea and a few people get behind it, then that has a certain energy about it. More people come in and more gather in, and then you have this sense of possibility again. So I suppose that was another line of thinking behind the project, but also like a question to throw back to people in the room, like, how do we take the energy that's come from this and then put that into new things? So music, sure, but starting to think about issues and starting to think about coming together and having ideas and being creative in our responses. I think it's kind of going back to what you're saying, as Jen, as well, like creativity and problem solving and thinking, right, well, there's all these problems, let's get together and have a creative and positive, constructive approach to it rather than sitting around moaning, which is quite tempting, really, a lot of the time.
I think the other thing, or maybe the next step, is what music generates, like what we are doing in our discussion. I remember when I went to the police band, one of the first things that generated a discussion was the title, Enough is Enough. And they didn't connect it to, the question wasn't connected to climate change, but it was connected to the political situation. So somebody asked me, well, if as the police, we start saying enough is enough, is the government not going to be angry with us? But then that sparked a new discussion, you know. And so, yeah, once we start speaking, then the ideas for the solutions begin to emerge. You know, like the question you just asked. So what next? You know, how do we create the change? You know, as individuals, but also as you know, different communities. You know, what steps should we take as individuals? What steps should we take as communities? What steps should we take as nation states? You know, what steps should we take as people, as human beings? What relationships should we have with trees, for instance? I remember when I was very young, you know, our dad was teaching in one of the very, you know, green parts of Ghana, you know, huge rainforests. And I remember when we drove back to the south, we drove through, you know, forest canopies. You know, the trees cross over from both sides of the road, and we're driving through, you know, tree tunnels. But then 30 years later, when our youngest sister, who wasn't born at that time, was working very near to where we lived, my brother and I traveled there, and there was no forest. You know, I was excited that we're going back there, you know, looking forward to see. There was no forest. There was no more any, you know, of those forest canopies. And the problem for me, the problem is that we call that development. You know, I remember remember very clearly my first lesson in middle school when they were teaching us about export. One of the exports was timber. Then we had gold and bauxite, and it went on and on and on. But all that came under the idea of development, you know. And now I reflect on it, and I realize that it's because we detached from the trees. That's why we cut them down and ship them away and call it development. So we need to rethink some of these terminologies, for example. You know, we need to like I said earlier on, recalibrate our understanding of ourselves and, you know, in relation to that.
Do we have any questions from the audience? We've got one at the back there, Marcus. Marcus is coming with a microphone for you.
Hello. I have a couple of things to say. First is anyone who hasn't read Kim Stanley Robinson's Ministry for the Future should. And don't worry, it gets better after the first couple of chapters, because it put me in bed for 3 days reading the first part of it. But what that book demonstrates is that the way that we'll deal with this is by everybody doing the thing that's right in front of them. And there's plenty of things that aren't right in front of us in Glasgow, but they're in front of someone. So if we can reach the person who it's in front of and inspire them to do something about it, we can reach all around the world. My work, my day job is raising money for things, and I see a lot of wonderful ideas. There's no shortage of wonderful ideas in the world, but the ones that make it somewhere are the ones who know what the next step is. Like, what's the thing you do next? So what I'd like to hear from the panel is not what's the top of the mountain, but what's the next thing that you're going to get up and do tomorrow or next week that is that next step, because the ideas are very inspiring and very energizing, and they pull us up into the abstract, but feet on the ground is where it is. So what's your next step?
So I run a toy bank over Christmas, and the reason for that is that I've got 2 young kids, and a few years ago I was doing the obligatory clear out before Santa, and I realised that I was throwing away plastic, but also that I was taking things that children love to places where parents who couldn't afford them to buy them back wouldn't be able to get them, essentially. So in 2019 we did the first one, in the Icebox Arts and Music Centre, and essentially I hired a van for 4 days and I drove around the whole of Scotland. I put out a call basically for all parents to gather their stuff, and gather they did into lots and lots of black bags, poured stuff into black bags, and I drove around Scotland for 3 or 4 days, and we collected them in we've got a great partner. I say we, I don't know who the we is. It just sounds better, doesn't it? I've got a partnership with the Icebox, who are a brilliant kind of charity-run venue in Glasgow. And we basically put out a poster to the Gorbals saying, this is not means tested, come and take what you like. So the day before the toy bank, we couldn't actually physically move for the amount of stuff, and some of it was broken, some of it was tat. We had other things like PlayStations and stuff, but in general, all this plastic, which you would have thrown in a skip, was set up, and we put it all up and we set it all out. And there was a queue around the block at 9 in the morning, and by 2 in the afternoon, every single piece of plastic was gone, taken for a child that wanted it. Sadly, we didn't get to do it last year, but that's my next step, and that's what I feel like is the contribution I can make, because it's right in front of me, you know. So yeah, if you've got old tat and plastic that your kids don't play with anymore, I'll come and pick it up in a van. and it goes out to the people, not just to the Gorbals, but it was both. I mean, I think for me that's mixing plastic waste with obviously the issues around poverty that we have in our own city. And it was quite a moving experience, but also it made me realise that you know, the cliche one man's waste is another man's treasure is true, and there's children in this city that won't have a Christmas, and we can really help them just by giving them a bit of our old plastic. So please do. I'll put a poster up on Facebook soon, so link up, and because that's my next step, I guess, getting ready for that.
I would say for us, we're pretty well established in Glasgow where we are now. We've been there for 4 years doing what we do. We started with 8 instruments, and we've now got over 2,000. So please come and take some, all y'all. So no, we're really happy with that. But we've just started doing a pop-up in Edinburgh with Edinburgh 2 Library. So we want there to be musical instrument libraries across the whole country, across the UK, across the world. So our ambition is not small at all. So if there's someone out there on the live stream who wants to do one in their own town, get in touch, we'll help you. We've got some instruments you can even start up with, you know. So that's our next steps. We started with an idea, and you know, we backed ourselves and we got on with it. So I would say if you're out there and you've got an idea, or your friend's got a daft idea, give them a hand, you know. There are people out there with daft ideas, just try it and see how it goes. So I would say take that away as a wee spark and to do your own thing, and we've, you know, sometimes it works out and you get a good response and it spurs you on to do more. So that's what we'll be doing now. Answer that question.
Do you want me to?
And a wee lie down after this.
Yeah. I was going to say that I'm going to mandate Ollie has a nap as the next step. But we have already started conversations about what next. One of which has been about the school's resource pack that we created. Like, young people are so on this issue. But we're really keen to make sure that our really little people have got the seeds planted in their heads, so that when they're that little bit older, and we're seeing it in Govan, we saw it in Govan today, as you said, there were primary school kids with placards. But I think it's really in the consciousness of kids in this city, because COP's here. But our ambition is to get that education pack into every school, so that teachers don't have another job to do. We can just give them a pack and go and do some of that stuff. So that's something that we're talking about as a next step. Yeah. Any more questions? No? Oh, there's one at the back there on Scott.
Yeah, so I had a fantastic day today. I just want to say that right at the start. But my question really comes from my background in the sort of environment conservation movement, which very much comes from a scientific background. And I was wondering if one of the struggles that the environmental or the conservation movement has always had is around inclusivity. And so my question to you is really about whether you have felt welcomed into the environmental movement, or whether you still fear there's a job to do around that. And also thoughts around the power of music as a tool for communication. Because I think one of the things that the conservation environmental movement has struggled with, especially from a science base, is around communicating a clear and strong message that people can get behind. Thanks, Scott.
Language is very important. The words we use have value. You know, every single word is value laden, and so even to feel welcome in any space, you know, is very dependent on the words you are met with. And so for there to be real understanding, you know, whether scientific or social, we need to choose our words. You know, we need to carefully bring understanding to what we want to do. For example, if we want people to stop flying, what words are we going to use? You know, and when the pandemic happened, everybody stopped flying. You know, we didn't need any words. We did not need any words. We just couldn't fly anymore. You know, so sometimes the earth teaches us, like I was saying earlier on, sometimes our lives are disrupted when we don't listen. You know, so there is communication happening, but we need to open up, you know, some of those channels, our personal channels. You know, you can sit in the presence of somebody and feel very comfortable without uttering a single word. How does that happen? So all I'm trying to draw your attention to is that we sense, maybe that's the word I should use, we sense what's around us. And so if we can allow ourselves to sense the world, to sense the earth, to sense people, to sense what's happening, you know, in the context that we find ourselves, then maybe a new understanding will happen gradually, you know, maybe not instantly, but gradually. Because it took a long time for us to get where we are, you know, and it may take us a long time, you know, but we have the ability, you know, to quicken things if we choose. It's also a choice thing, you know. If we choose to, we can hasten the reversal of the situation. So I don't know if I've really answered your questions, but I think that, you know, in terms of feeling welcome anywhere, I feel welcome in your presence right now. You know, and yeah, it's just because of the atmosphere that's been created. And again, that was the choice of a group of people to create this atmosphere, to create this environment, to create this dialogue. You know, so there's a lot in there. And I think the fact that you are here and you're taking part in this is also something, you know. I always say that every action we take, every decision we make, is like a drop in the ocean, which creates ripples. The ripples we create sometimes go beyond our own horizons, So yeah, that would be my response to that question.
I'd like to pick up on that as well, if that's okay, because I agree with you about the choice of words, language. My PhD at the moment is about integrating hip hop into early years education as a way of early intervention. And the reason for that is to allow young people to create in a language that they understand. And I think, especially for disadvantaged young people from ACES backgrounds, stuff like that in the city. So again, this is a class analysis, I guess. But showing them that creativity isn't just about, understanding how to play an instrument or even having a specific issue at the heart of it, but about using their voice to create meaning from what they think, from their ideas. I think that has to start at a really young age, and that's about recontextualising how we actually look at creativity and what it is. And so I think we get to a certain point in our lives where we're like, right, we get this and we want to share this message, but the young people in our schools are still going through a very archaic curriculum where they're not actually being taught to think freely and think creatively. So, and certainly there's a generation of academics and people that are working to change that. And I think every message that is social, environmental, or has, a meaning which could effectively down the line change the prospects or life of all of us, but specifically our young people, we have to find a language to share that with them. And within our schools, it's not, I'm using hip hop as a bit of a Trojan horse, but that's not really what it's about. It's about being creative, right? And so I think that's where it has to start, and it has to start by not coming from a dictatorial angle where we're saying, here's the issue, what have you got to say about it, but saying, what do you want to talk about? And how do you feel? And starting to get people comfortable with speaking about how they feel from a very young age, and then hoping that will echo out into society. Obviously we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to need to hurry up with it. But hoping that there is a pathway there through seeing creativity as just as valuable as science, and just as valuable as law and other things, and treating it with the same respect, I think.
I think responding to your question about science a wee bit is that I completely agree with what Becky's saying about, the conversation needs to be in the language of people that they understand it, and sometimes I do agree with you. The type of language and the telling I find from environmental movements is sometimes a bit, difficult for people to, it feels a bit preachy or something like that. So I think we all have to have a part to play in that. I would say also that the arts and music is sometimes seen as a soft kind of skill or a soft touch, and it's not taken seriously. And I think we can demonstrate the power of what we do in lots of different ways. So we measure the carbon impact of reusing instruments, and we have a library that we need to keep a roof over, and we have to have financial, records and stuff that we do at that. So I think being open about that as well, that we're not just sitting in a sort of floaty art space and having lots of fun and doing stuff. We have responsibilities in that way as well, that we're scientists in our own way. I'm an engineer by trade, so that we're measuring all these things, and we understand that, and we're demonstrating that you can make value along these lines of being musical and being creative while still reducing carbon in your own community. I think that's really important when we're talking about what we do as well, to convey that.
Yeah, I think we basically need it all, don't we? We have to have the science which is going to show us and demonstrate and provide the evidence of what's happening. But science can't actually tell us what to do. It can't necessarily come up with the ideas. So you need all of it. You need to have the facts and the figures, the evidence, and then you need to have the creative thinking and the problem solving and the sense of possibility and the ability to come together with your communities or with other people and then make those changes. So sometimes I think that these things are all seen as separate. Oh, well, we're taking a science approach and we're taking an artistic approach, and subjects at school are just completely almost
operating in isolation from each other. And I think that's part of the problem. It's like, well, you guys are dealing with that and we'll deal with this. And actually, it's about recognising the power of a holistic approach and appreciating all of those inputs. But ultimately, we'll have to do something ourselves. We can't sort of look at the evidence and wait for somebody else. So like you're saying, Becky, the clock's ticking. This actually is it. We should stop talking. I do also really love the idea of an actual hip-hop Trojan horse. Like, can we do that? That's the next project.
One of my first, I think the first job I got out of uni a long time ago was with the science communication department at Liverpool Uni in the physics department. And there was an amazing physicist who ran that department who really championed how we bring the arts into communicating science. The show that I was in was cringeworthy, terrible, because we were all fresh graduates, and we thought we were amazing, but it wasn't. But we had an amazing time touring primary schools, singing about all kinds of different scientists. So, I mean, I agree. I think we need to bring the two worlds together because we can, where we put ideas together is where the magic happens. Yeah. Any more questions before we? One more at the back. Go. Two more. I saw another hand go up.
Hi, thank you. I'll just start by thanking everyone who's been part of this and made this happen, because it's been amazing to be part of and just inspiring to see. So thanks. I know there's been a lot of hard work into it. Also just picking up on some of what you were saying about the kids that we all saw there today. Just seeing their engagement and like the energy there was really really inspiring. And like just overhearing, I think it was about the puppet. I just overheard a wee boy so excited saying like, I think I might faint when I see it. Just getting that energy from them was really great today, and I think I needed that little lift. The thing I was wanting to say was kind of picking up on what you were talking about there. I guess something that's kind of, our friend was telling me yesterday about a sign that he'd seen in an art gallery recently saying, "You will never defeat us, for we have already defeated ourselves," which is depressing, and mainly because it's depressingly accurate. I think it can feel like that way, that we in the left environmental movement, like there's a lot of energy put into kind of fighting on issues where we have different ideas about where we're trying to go to eventually, rather than thinking about what we're doing, what we need to do now to get there, and then once we get there, let's work that out. And one of the most inspiring things I think I've had experience of in the last week is just talking with a friend who I've been hosting, who's doing a lot of facilitation around that in terms of like coalition building and really trying to push that, which builds on the idea that you've just been talking about, I guess, in terms of like bringing ideas together. But I think there's a lot more we could be doing with that in terms of bringing groups and people together who have really different values, and sometimes ones that are really, really opposed to each other, and there's can be a lot in there that needs to be worked on, but there's also a lot of common ground, and it's about like focusing on that common ground now, because it's so urgent. And I feel like we need to stop wasting time trying to look at those long-term things and look at focus on that common ground, and find that way forward. So I suppose and part of this conversation was then with another friend who is doing more like musical type stuff, and he was interested in doing some work with that, like bouncing off that idea, getting people with different values together to make songs, and then like, I don't know, I think there's just a really nice allegory, particularly with like harmony and the idea of people singing, you know, you can be singing at a different pitch, but you're creating a whole and kind of working towards the same thing. I felt like there's something quite powerful in that. Don't quite know what my question is, but I guess it's like, you know, maybe it's an invitation for everyone here to be thinking, like, are there areas where we could, have more of those conversations, and is there a part to play? Does music have a part to play in that? Which I think it does, as part of it, as part of a wider project. Thanks.
I think there's one last question, and then we'll close.
I've often had cause to reflect on where my own politics came from, in the interest of, you know, how do you convince other people? And although I think we all like to imagine that we rationally considered the options, something I realised was that my politics came from music. I grew up in Dunblane, going to the Dunblane Folk Club once a month. My dad would take me, and they would sing songs, the Burns songs about Scottish independence, and they'd sing the old socialist songs from the Spanish Civil War, and surprise, surprise, I grew up with that as my politics. It was only as an adult I realised that was deliberate, that Hamish Henderson was a pivotal figure who set out to create folk clubs across the country that would communicate that politics. And he was the first English translator of Gramsci, who was this, you know, theorist of how culture and the material interact, and how particularly things like churches in Italy had helped to prevent a revolution there. So I guess I'm interested from the panel as people who I think largely seem to be involved in creating musical institutions, and how musical institutions can help to communicate a politics and to bring people together collectively in like creating a politics together as well.
Unrequited love for about 20 years, that's the case, because I grew up on Joni Mitchell and the Carpenters. Yeah, I think that the commercial music industry, which is what I teach in, has done a lot of work in making people who write political music feel left out and feel ostracised. And I think that within the confines of the educational institutions that teach that, it's certainly something that's discussed. And we look towards where musical activism is happening now on a commercial level and how that speaks to young people. And certainly what I've found, surprisingly, because I think I came into the job that I have now with a misconception about that, and I felt that, you know, if you liked Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen, then, you know, you were going down the right road, and if you were into, you know, Little Mix, you weren't learning something. And actually through like the Bordovian theory of taste and teaching about that and learning more about that, I realised that what actually I was seeing was a mirror back on myself, because I wasn't participating in the conversation, which was still happening, albeit in different places, and certainly climate, until perhaps the last few years hasn't been top of the kind of list of stuff that kind of music is discussing. But the young people that I work with have a very clear understanding of their place in the discussion around identity politics, and some of the discussion around looking through a race lens or different theoretical lenses that perhaps for someone like me I completely missed out on in my upbringing and understanding of music and what it was. I'm going to try and be really fast and not go into a big speech. So like I showed them like pictures of people like you know, from the musical canon that we would assume they're learning from, people from the literary canon, Shakespeare, Robert Burns, Led Zeppelin, all these people, you know, and they didn't know who they were. They just like showed them a picture of Billie Eilish, and suddenly we were having a conversation about identity politics. So I think that sometimes we forget that there is a conversation happening, And it's our job to be part of it and understand where it is happening, you know. And I hate to say it again, but it really is happening in hip hop. Which is really cool, you know, really cool to see. And I'm actually a folk musician by trade, so I think that we need to reimagine modern folk music for this generation and speak about the issues that they're discussing in other parts of the industries more widely, because they are happening. We call it rockism versus poptimism. We get into it more another day. That's my answer for you. That's what I've got to say.
I would say that, like, echoing what Becky's saying, that in terms of different types of music, we've just seen you can write a beautiful protest song. You don't have to be standing up and shouting and being the Sex Pistols to have a protest song. There's been many great protest songs, and you know, going back to the specials with Free Nelson Mandela. I mean, what a tune! We all know that one, you know. And even Bob Marley, you know, there's many poets and stuff out there who've written songs. I'm thinking Beth Ditto sing "Standing in the Way of Control." I mean, what a banging tune that is, and you know, and that was in response to the controls Beth felt was being put on her life and her gender and her identity. So, you know, you can write mainstream songs that can say a powerful thing. And I think we all have our different genres and stuff that we listen to, but that can infiltrate into any type of thing that you're writing, be it folk, be it listening to old music and finding the words. We have a great tradition in this country and in Scotland of writing songs about things that are important to us, and we have many good poets and songwriters, and you know, so let's keep doing that, and let's keep having those conversations and stick those words in there, and don't be afraid to do it, is what I would say.
I would like to just echo that from the perspective of story. So we all navigate, you know, the world, understanding and everything through the process of how we story ourselves. And how we express through storying, through telling stories. So I think that, you know, we remember, you know, most of the lessons we learn by, you know, what story, you know, we receive them from. So if you're creating political music, for instance, and it has a good story, people will remember it. You know, if it has a story that people can relate to, if it's a story that touches people's hearts, you know, that impact is direct and permanent. I remember many years ago, we created a song with the names of our classmates, you know, at home. And those I remember, those classmates that I remember now are the ones whose names were in that song. And I also remember the exact situation, you know, that made us decide that we were going to create a song of our classmates' names. So there's a little story there that has traveled with me all these years. And so if we can translate that into our activism, you know, if we can make the stories that matter, the stories that people can relate to, the stories that people can understand, then we'll be heading somewhere. I told you a story about how the tidal wave is washing through my hometown. I'm sure you remember that tomorrow. You know, I'm sure when you remember me sitting here, that's one of the stories that you remember. And so stories stick with us. So if we want to create change, we can't create change through carving change stories, you know, for ourselves and for those we want to influence.
So officially, the project ends here. We get on with our evaluation reports, make sure everyone's paid. But this has to be the beginning, doesn't it? It's not the end. The films we've just watched are all really, really new. So what do we do with them now? How do we use them to fight for better decisions around climate? How do we use them as examples of excellence to start doing more work around activism with our communities? Music speaks to us in ways the boring meetings can't. They speak to our soul, and if we can get to the souls of some of the decision makers, and if we can influence behaviour change at a grassroots level, at an individual level, well, just imagine what we could do. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thanks to everyone on the panel for sitting there as the night gets colder. Thanks to everybody in the room who's helped make tonight possible. Tom at the back, who's been live streaming, and all the guys running around doing all their bits and bobs. You are invisible, but they're really important. And I just want to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to every single one of you who's been part of this project. There's too many of you to name, and you know who you are, so just give yourselves a little pat on the back. To finish the night, I'm going to leave you with the voices of the people who will see the impacts of the decisions that are made by our world leaders in this city this week. Our young people. Here to finish the night is a youth carnival version of Enough is Enough, created by youth... Oh, I'm going...
Nearly there.
This is my favourite one. It's been made by youth organisations across the UK working together. We're answerable to them. The decisions of the leaders affect their future way more than it affects ours, and they know it. How incredible is it to see the next generation stepping into activism? And at such a young age, as we saw today. And in fact, they're not just stepping into it, they're leading it. It's just so exciting. So let's listen to them.
If we walk in forest, we might see a bird, but if we didn't protect it, we won't walk in forest and we won't see birds.
So we just should look after our planet because it's our home. Do you know, why would you want to destroy your home?
Now we're just making hell on earth.
At the end of the day, if we don't sort it out now, it's going to have massive repercussions in the future.
You're the leaders of our future, so please try and make it a good future for us.
When everybody starts to help, we'll get better and better.